This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. We Act Radio, SoFlo Radio, iTunes, YouTube. Thank you. So, in all this talk about the NSA, something that has fallen off the radar of not just the media, but what appears to be the majority of Congress is fixing the so-called sequester. All of a sudden, nobody's talking about undoing the damage of these huge budget cuts as a whole. You know, we've seen bits and pieces be restored or changed. Certain things like, air traffic controllers so flights aren't delayed, but nobody's helping the Meals on Wheels. Nobody's helping stimulate local economies. And we are starting to see the effect of what happens when austerity is imposed on our country. Already, we've seen the first quarter of 2013, the largest wage drop in history since they've been keeping records. In 65 years, Americans have never experienced such a large drop in wages, in average wages. We've also seen the unemployment rate start to tick back up. And more of our infrastructure, of our vital programs are not just struggling to get by on what they were dealing with before, but trying to figure out how to implement these cuts and have as little painful impact as possible. So everybody is focusing on government surveillance, and they should. It's important. But we need to walk and chew gum at the same time and replace this debate about austerity, get it back into congressional discussion, because it seems to be smacking us in the face over and over and over. Austerity is dead. The theory of austerity as functional is completely obliterated, yet we're still imposing it here. We saw first that the economical study by Karen Reinhart and Kenneth Rogoff was completely debunked. One economics student was able to completely undo their entire theory that having too much debt, national debt, leads to negative GDP growth. That was completely obliterated. We didn't fix the problem then. We didn't reverse the spending cuts then. Then we saw huge pain and suffering throughout other countries that were further along in this austerity progress. We saw Greece unemployment rise to over 25%. Their economy shrank by 1/5, a fifth of their economy. Republicans sitting there complaining about government spending, government debt, which first of all has gone down. Our deficit is less than half of what it was when President Obama took office, which he kept his promise. But we're failing to recognize what austerity is doing to these other countries. And for the first time in history, a country has now been taken from developed, just as we consider ourselves, we live in a developed nation, and reversed to be considered an emerging market. MSCI Incorporated, they are an investment index provider. They just pretty much say, here's a list of statistics. In order to be considered a developed nation, you have to have so much national growth, a certain percentage of unemployment, et cetera. You have to meet certain targets. Greece has been considered a developed nation pretty much since the existence of this index in 1987. They are no longer considered a developed nation. That is what austerity has done to that country. It has moved them back in time. It has reversed nearly 30 years of economic progress and economic development in that country. Yet we still didn't do anything to reverse the sequester, to stop the spending cuts, to change the austerity that's been imposed on our nations here. Nothing. We're not even talking about it. And I get it. Again, national security, there's other important stuff going on. But There are 535 people picked to lead this country, and they should be able to focus on more than one issue at a time. Well, as if that wasn't enough, as if the glaring issue of what austerity is doing and will do to our country wasn't clear enough, now the International Monetary Fund has come out and told us what we need to be doing. In an astonishing announcement, the IMF said just this week that the United States must repeal austerity, must reverse the spending cuts, and begin stimulating their economy again in order to sustain growth. They've already changed their estimated growth rate for the U.S. When they first decided how much our economy would grow after the spending cuts, they estimated it at 2.7%. But the IMF said, I'm paraphrasing, they didn't assume that our government would implement all of these spending cuts and do it all at once. They have now lowered that forecast to 1.9% by 2014. So they estimate our entire economy will only grow less than 2% by 2014. And just to remind you, this is the same agency, the same world organization that said the austerity in Greece would be just fine. They came out and said that was a mistake. They didn't estimate correctly how much pain and suffering austerity in Greece would really cause. And whoa, hold on here. We need to start undoing some of this damage. But they didn't do that in time for Greece to maintain its developed nation status. They didn't do that in time to prevent 25% unemployment in Greece. And this is just hitting country after country after country in the EU. And as we're watching it happen, we're not even discussing what it's going to do to our nation. In case you weren't aware, Greece instituted huge amounts of spending cuts, huge amounts of austerity that led to the financial damage that occurred there. We have put in place more. We have a higher percentage of our GDP in spending cuts, 2.9%, than was implemented in Greece. And yet we're still not listening. So the IMF came out this week and said the deficit reduction in 2013 has been excessively rapid and ill-designed. These cuts should be replaced with a backloaded mix of entitlement savings and new revenues. They're saying raise your taxes. Start stimulating the economy again. And we're still not listening. We have legislators that are spending their time working on trying again to vote to repeal Obamacare, to vote again to ban abortion, something that has already been decided by the Constitution. That's what they're spending their time on. And if we don't say enough is enough, we could end up just like Greece. There's nothing preventing us from losing that developed nation status. There's nothing preventing us from reaching 25% unemployment if we don't stop the spending cuts, if we don't reverse the sequester and start investing in our country. You know, we're not paying attention. The information is everywhere. It's right in front of our face. But we're pissed off right now about the government spying on us, and we should be. And we're tied up in an immigration debate and ridiculous Republican senators who just throw bombs out there in the mix to control the discussion. We have to be able to focus on this and all those things at the same time. And we can. And if we don't, we may end up just like Greece. So there's my rant for the day. Call Congress, call your senator, tell them that they can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think if we can do it and we can be upset about all these issues at once, they should be able to, too. So, you're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Austerity is dead. Now, let's bury it. We'll be back with more here on Talking Left in just a few minutes. Stick around.
I'm David Schuster of Take Action News, and you're listening to my favorite show other than my own, Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
For 35 years, I dug, hauled the coal. Yeah, buddy, I did my time. So I have a name for a man like great voice. I believe he has no soul. And I didn't work, not one damn day, not one for Patriot Coal.
You still fired up? Yeah! Are you fired up? Yeah! Are you fed up? Yeah! Are you ready to fight? Yeah! We stand today not because we want more money. We want justice today.
United Mine Workers of America President Cecil Roberts, 5,000 coal miners and their supporters rallied here in Henderson, Kentucky Tuesday demanding justice from Peabody Energy, Patriot, and Arch Coal. The UMWA says Peabody is robbing miners of retiree benefits by using bankruptcy law in a scheme to get rid of pension and retiree health care obligations earned by miners who spent decades in the mines. The union is appealing the bankruptcy ruling and is organizing a movement to fight the loss of the promised and earned benefits.
This movement right here is the United Mine Workers Traveling Salvation Show.
Doyle Conyer is a retired Crittenden, Kentucky miner.
It's always the same story, even back when I started in 76. Less men, more coal. That's what they want. You know, they talk about some of the poor people now, they have to choose between medicine and food. We're going to be right there with them in a few days if we don't get this turned around.
Illinois miner Gary Schwartz says miners who depend on these retiree health care benefits are being hurt by Peabody's lies.
And they think they can just throw us out. They don't need us no more because they think we're done, but we're not. And we're here to let them know that we're not done. And this is not over with until we say it's over with.
You all are hereby ordered to vacate this intersection or be subject to criminal arrest for obstructing a highway in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Will you remove yourself from this intersection? You will not. Is that correct? Yes.
14 people, including UMWA President Cecil Roberts, were arrested after sitting down in an intersection in a symbolic, peaceful civil disobedience action. The UMWA is planning rallies into September, as well as legal challenges to the cutoff of retiree health benefits and the end of Patriot Coal payments into the UMWA retirement system. For Workers Independent News, Doug Cunningham, Henderson, Kentucky.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
In the forest near the side of the road.
No need for alarm, sir. The forest is where bears live.
But this was no ordinary bear.
No ordinary bear?
Yeah, 1 second I'm having a smoke taken in the view. Next thing I know, I am face to face with Smokey Bear.
Let me guess, Smokey had a tip for you.
He did. He must have seen me toss my cigarette on the ground. He told me never to do that because it only takes one spark to start a wildfire.
He's a smart bear. Did you know that 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans? That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
That's what Smokey said. I had no idea.
That's why Smokey's famous, and you're not.
Good point.
If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference, because 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out.
Look awfully official up there, those papers and things.
I have too many papers. I'm losing my papers in my papers. I try and organize them. I save them throughout the week and try and keep them from when I want to talk about them in the show. But as often happens, I lose my place and don't know where I left off. You know, we were talking with Desi Doyen earlier about so many environmental issues. And I thought it was interesting because I know I hadn't heard about this. She brought it up with me in our chit-chatting back and forth about her coming on the show. Did you know, Shane, that there was not one but two more chemical plant explosions that happened this week?
Really? Where?
Louisiana.
Both in Louisiana?
Yep. The second one was only 10 miles away from where the first exploded. Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal has confirmed that one person was killed in the first explosion, another person was killed in the second. But because, firefighters were able to get it under wraps fairly quickly, the news media didn't think it was worth covering. I think this is interesting to point out right at the same time that FEMA has denied federal aid to the city of West Texas.
Well, the rebuilding money. They've given money to individuals.
Right. They provided individuals with FEMA funds to, help cover the cost of rebuilding their homes
People
and stuff.
it was not their fault.
Right. But they will not assist the town of West Texas with the $57 million it needs to replace roads, schools, basic infrastructure. They say it is not the level of emergency that meets emergency declaration funding needs.
I got to tell you, I'm split on this.
I am too.
I really, really am. Because it's a kind of one of those, thumb in the eye, that's what you get, Texas, for deregulating and underinsuring. But there are people who live in that town.
Right.
These are real human beings whose, by no fault of their own, their lives were turned upside down and it exploded outwards because of these things. I understand you have to stay within the guidelines and all that, but they're our fellow Americans.
Exactly.
So, wow, it's just so tough.
Right, and I can't help but wonder if these two Louisiana chemical plants that just exploded, that nobody's talking about, if this is the future that's going to be outlined for these communities as well.
Right.
Because the plant in West Texas only had $1 million of liability insurance. $1 million. I
would imagine that their insurer, if they knew that's what they were actually storing there, probably wouldn't have insured it for anything.
Right. But
honestly.
$1 million is a drop in the bucket.
Well, compared to 57, of course.
Right. And when you think of the terms of our national budget, $57 million is a drop in the bucket.
Sure.
It would be quite easy for Congress. That's a rounding error for Congress.
That's an IRS outing. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. That's an IRS video. I think I am really torn because I feel like corporations, especially companies that hold such toxic, dangerous chemicals, should be forced to meet regulations that protect their communities. I think they should be forced to have enough insurance to cover the damage if and when events like this happen. But this one didn't. This happened. This already occurred. And Americans in West Texas are harmed because of corporate irresponsibility. Is it really right that we leave them on their own to deal with it? I just feel... I feel like we are better than that as citizens.
And then when you're not thinking of these people as just a statistic, you say, well, then there's the moral hazard and maybe they'll vote next time for the regulation and get, but I can't. You can't. I mean, we're bleeding heart liberals, please.
Right.
And
I've seen both sides of this argument on social media. I've seen people saying, screw them. That's what they get for voting in Republican jerks. But did every single person in that town vote Republican? And even if they had,
worse, you're going to go through and say, "Who'd you vote for?" Okay, you voted for that. You can't do that,
right?
So we are United States of America. Wow. First thing that needs to be done, just putting this aside, is you got to look at all these chemical plants and say, are you insured enough?
And are you housing 1,300 times more of a specific
to get
chemical?
Insurance, they have to disclose what they're housing.
Right.
And when you find out you can't get insurance, then you got to shut down. I'm sorry. What you are doing is so dangerous that you can't get insurance, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
So, one, insure for your maximum liability that you could cause. If you cannot get it, you're done.
Right.
Now you have insurance. You can't insure. I mean, if someone loses their life, there's no way to insure that. No. But all the property damage you could do. So we prevent this in the next time. In terms of these people, once that's done, maybe it's kind of like the border security people on the Republican side, then we can talk about this. But then what do the people do in the meantime? I don't like this. FEMA obviously has certain, standards, regulations put in place, and I don't know how arbitrary it is or if it's really these are the guidelines, and they're not met, and therefore we can't. I don't know how bright a line is, how much discretion there is.
I don't
If
either.
they're exercising discretion to make an example, I don't,
When
I
you're
hope not.
talking about $57 million, which sound, if either one of us, if anybody listening had $57 million, it would be more money than we knew what to do with. But in terms of of the country as a whole, of our national budget, it is such a small drop in the bucket that this shouldn't even be a debate. Okay, force the regulations. How about put contingencies on the money that say, in order to receive these funds, you need to provide that the other plants in your town are well regulated.
Yeah, there you go.
I
think
would be
that's
fine
reasonable.
with that.
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, but we don't turn our backs on our fellow Americans.
Especially not in red state, blue state, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Period.
Whether they're in a red state or not. So, yeah, keep an eye on Louisiana, and hopefully the same thing doesn't happen to them. Hopefully those disasters don't turn out to be anywhere near the scale that we saw in West Texas. Anyhow, we're going to be back with more. We're going to be speaking with John Fugelsang in just a few minutes, the host of Viewpoint on Current TV. You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano, and we will be right back. Stick around.
So, who is responsible for these outrages? It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
We got no plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. The Bradley Manning trial is now underway because he let the world know that the U.S. is clearly guilty of war crimes. And at the same time, Edward Snowden has revealed that the National Security Agency is nearing completion of a full surveillance state in which none of our electronic communications are safe. You take these two cases together, and you see that something very grave is going on. A dark cloud is building over America. And that dark cloud can only be stopped by the strength of the American people standing up together. That dark cloud is, of course, whistleblowing. These did not keep their mouths shut. Jesus Christ, these people are worse than altar boys. Can't keep a secret. Not a one. The Obama administration has prosecuted more government officials for whistleblowing than all previous administrations combined. Clearly, this is because there are more anti-American traitors to stamp out than ever before. And not because the Obama administration has gone off the rails and is abusing power and out of their minds. Of course, that's sarcasm. Bradley Manning saw war crimes being committed, the full-on murder of unarmed innocent civilians, including a Reuters journalist, on video, and he felt the need to tell the world. He felt the need to let the American people decide whether we wanted to support that. And for his brave decision, he may well spend the rest of his life behind bars. Meanwhile, Lindy England, the soldier who piled Iraqis into naked pyramids and dragged them around in dog collars and other things you thought were strictly reserved for the pages of Ann Coulter's tell-all, she spent 521 days in prison. The ringleader, Charles Grainer, was sentenced to 10 years. And I assume the pilots of the helicopter that actually gunned down those civilians have served no time. So we're saying that if you commit war crimes as a soldier, you serve little or no time. But if you reveal war crimes, then you stain on this democracy of hypocrisy. You told people about the dirty we're doing? We're gonna lock you in a tiny cage until you die. Scooter Libby and Karl Rove outed an active CIA agent, not a day in jail. Dick Cheney shot a dude in the face. In the face with a gun. And the face is like the most important part of a person. With Bradley Manning, as with Edward Snowden, people say they should have shut up and done their jobs, followed orders. You know, there were some trials a long time ago where several guys were accused of really bad shit, and they said, we were just following orders. We were being good soldiers. And the world community decided, not good enough. If you see bad or you're asked to do bad, following orders is no excuse. Those trials were called the Nuremberg trials, and a bunch of Nazis were found guilty of war crimes. So although I'm not a lawyer, it seems to me like Bradley Manning could have been prosecuted under the Nuremberg principles if he had not brought the crimes to the world's attention. And now is when you can do something. Manning and perhaps Snowden will not only be tried in court, they will be tried every day in public opinion. We should all talk about the courage it took for Manning to stand up, talk about the bravery it took for Edward Snowden to throw away a $200,000 a year job, a house in Hawaii, and perhaps his freedom in order to reveal the illegal U.S. surveillance state. $200,000 a year? $200,000? I could see leaking the if you had a midnight shift over the fryer at McDonald's or a graveyard shift changing the pants on the mannequins at the Big and Tall store, then I understand. But $200,000 in Hawaii just to help the American people regain our freedom? God, that's impressive. I once saw an old lady fall on her face on a sidewalk outside the sports bar I was in, and I didn't help because I didn't want to lose my seat. I had a good angle on the TV. Good angle. I will say one bad thing about whistleblowers, though. Always such negative Nancy's. Have you noticed that? Never a positive word to say. So depressing, whistleblowers. Why not cheer people up for a change instead of always being so glum? You know, why not leak that cookie dough ice cream is very delicious? Or that you saw a bunny rabbit? You know, and instead of always war crimes and fascist governments intrusion in our lives. You ever think of that? You ever think of someone other than yourselves? We're very depressed out here. That's been your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. The music here at the end is a complex slate by my friends in the band Schemata Theory. A link to that video is in the description. Keep fighting.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Packers.
Vikings.
Red State.
Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But we can all make a difference. That's why United Way brings people, expertise, and resources together to improve the education, income, and health of our communities. The building blocks for a better life. When we live united, our efforts add up to real change. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly, so do our communities. But real change won't happen without you. So let's look beyond our differences.
Live united.
Let's make a difference.
Live united.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Looks like we can't reach Mr. John Fugelsang at the moment, but hopefully he may join us soon. In the meantime, we have spent so much of the show talking about things that are frustrating, things that are bad, things that are wrong, that we thought it's important to focus on members of Congress that are actually out there fighting for the things that we're talking about, the things that Americans are calling for. And
well, Congress has now a 10% approval rating?
Yes.
Well, this would be the 10%.
Yes, these would be the 10%. Starting with, I'll put these in the wrong order here. Here we go. Representative Adam Schiff of California. He has actually put forth a proposal to repeal the, that may be John. Let's see here. Is that John Fugelsang?
Sorry about the delay.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
My pleasure. Great to be back.
Just to remind everybody, John is the host of Viewpoint on Current TV, as well as an amazing comedian. I don't think there's anything you don't do, John.
Oh, why? Thank you. That's very kind of you. Yes, and I'm licensed in shiatsu and available for public and private functions.
By the way, I just wanted to say, amazing piece Thursday on Viewpoint about the difference in how we prosecute rapists and hackers. Very powerful stuff. Do you want to tell a little bit to the audience to encourage them to go over and watch Viewpoint?
Oh, well, sure. I'd love to. Well, you should watch Viewpoint because it's the most intelligent and irreverent news analysis on TV that barely anyone can get after Time Warner pulled their stunts. But as you know, the Steubenville rapists were really going to walk free until a hacker was able to go and find all of their texts and Facebook posts and the actual video of them laughing about what they had done. And that's really what put them away. Now, of course, all the boys, student athletes who watched the rape and were present for it, aided and abetted, laughed, posted about how the woman was a slut on Facebook. They didn't do any time. But two of the boys were given 1 to 2 year sentences. Then the FBI swooped in on the actual hacker, who is from Anonymous. He goes by the name KY Anonymous. They arrested him at gunpoint and confiscated all of his computers and hard drives. And he now faces up to 10 years in jail for exposing the rape. So the two rapists got 1 to 2 years in a juvenile facility. The guy who exposed the rape that an entire town tried to excuse, that the police didn't prosecute, that the coaches tried to cover up, he's going to face 5 times as much jail time as the rapist. So welcome to America, where hacking is now 5 times worse than gang rape.
It's really astonishing because it seems like the perfect snapshot of this Edward Snowden NSA situation, where instead of talking about the crazy violation of the Constitution of the government spying on Americans, so much of the media, especially those on the right, is spending more time talking about Edward Snowden and his pole dancing girlfriend and all of this just ridiculous nonsense. Do you think that they're just avoiding the issue?
Very much, yeah. I think Republicans and Democrats both have to avoid the issue. You know, when you've got John Boehner and Dianne Feinstein, up against Michael Moore and Glenn Beck. Yeah. I mean, that's not strange bedfellows. That's a key party at the Star Wars Cantina bar scene. And it's pretty crazy how the media is forcing us the story on Snowden. And again, it's very interesting. He's an interesting guy. I think is he a traitor or a hero debate is, kind of played out. I think we don't know yet, and I think it's a very good chance he could be both. But this is all stuff that most of us have already known was going on. He just validated a lot of it. And, of course, if you want to criticize America for their lack of privacy, go live in Hong Kong. That makes a lot of sense. But it's going to be curious to see how it plays out over the next few days. I mean, we already know that he's a big Ron Paul guy. So I respect that he really believes what he's saying about civil liberties. But saying he didn't do it to hurt his country and then coming out and telling a Chinese newspaper he's going to reveal American espionage secrets on China, that's just kind of debaggy. So I think it's still going to be playing out. But yeah, the story's not him. He's just the messenger. The real story is what the government's doing in our name. And I think the problem is, even if every terrorist laid down their arms and said, I love America and my jihad is done, and terrorism finally ended, even if that absurd scenario could happen, these laws would still be in place. And that's the new normal. Yeah.
And I think to some degree that as Americans is our fault. So many of us, I've heard this argument so much this week. I don't care. I don't have anything to hide. I'd rather have the government watching and to keep me from blowing up.
Well, absolutely. And I think most people agree with that. The question is, it becomes sort of like the seatbelt law. The seatbelt law we can all agree on. It keeps people safe and it saves lives. But the seatbelt law is also used as a way to allow cops to mess with anyone they want to mess with. So, cops pull anyone over for a seatbelt law, and by the way, sir, what's in the trunk? And, I think that even though the polls say Americans have no trouble whatsoever with having some of their privacy violated, and I think we would all agree it's worth it for safety, the problem is the slippery slopeism of the whole situation. And what does it mean years down the road when the government finds stuff about you completely independent from terrorism that they can use against you?
Exactly.
Let's not forget, they used the Patriot Act to take out Elliot Spitzer for his personal life.
That's such an amazing point. I had forgotten all about that. Just curious of your opinion of the hypocrisy. We've seen the right all week, essentially calling for Snowden's head in not so soft terms, but at the same time continuing to complain about any investigation of James Rosen. Do you think that's hypocrisy, or I mean, they are different crimes? Is there some justification there?
You know, the Supreme Court just said that the law enforcement can take a swab of your DNA, for future reference. And our conservative friends, by and large, had no problem with that. Of course, it's hypocrisy. We're used to it. What's interesting about Snowden is that he's got seemingly Democrats and Republicans versus liberals, libertarians, and conservatives. And so that's sort of part of it. The Rosen thing, I'm creeped out by the government going ahead and spying on journalists. But let's keep in mind, the GOP's not going to complain about that. They can't. John Bolton was on Fox this week talking about how we've got to stop talking about NSA and talking about the real scandals, Benghazi and the IRS. And John Bolton was really reading from the GOP playbook. They're not going to talk about NSA, and they're not going to talk about the AP scandals, because those might actually be scandals, but they can't. They're born under Bush. So they'll talk about Benghazi and IRS, which are not scandals. And this is how the theater is going to play out for the next year and a half.
Oh, that's it. I hadn't thought about the born under Bush aspect. That's totally correct. Just to remind everybody, we're speaking with John Fugelsang, host of Viewpoint on Current TV. You can check it out Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And online, you can get great segments like the one I was referencing at the beginning of the interview. You've been doing some interesting coverage this week, John, of Rupert Murdoch's divorce. I haven't seen anybody else talking about it. Can you break that down? What the heck is going on?
We didn't really do any coverage of it. I did a segment called The Bachelor, 83-year-old right-wing Aussie billionaire edition. He divorced from his wife, Wendy, and they asked me if I wanted to talk about that. And I'm like, I don't want to mock a guy's personal life. They were together a long time, and he was only single for 17 days the last time he got divorced. So it was great that he met someone and fell in love and married that quickly, with zero romantic overlap. But, we just did a dating profile for Murdoch, reminding people of exactly what this single bachelor has to celebrate about himself.
Bringing Murdoch up, it is interesting that anybody related, even indirectly, with Fox or News of the World, whatever it is over in the UK, would complain about government surveillance or spying.
That was the real point that I used to get into it was, there's nothing really funnier than someone working on a Rupert Murdoch news channel complaining about government listening in on your phone calls when seemingly they have no problem with newspaper men and the media listening in on your phone calls. So every time you see Sean Hannity criticize this, know that Sean Hannity will never criticize the media for eavesdropping and hacking, because that's his boss.
So the media can do it, but hey, they're not subject to the Constitution, I suppose.
Exactly right. Well, Rupert became an American citizen just by a TV network.
That's right. Who knows? Maybe he'll get himself a new American citizen bride to go along with it.
Some people change their religions to get married. He changes his nationality to get more media power.
Yes, but I wonder if, like they want to do with Latinos, Republicans will subject him to a 5-year delay in receiving any government services.
I somehow don't think that happened. I don't think Rupert had a lot of trouble getting to the front of the line.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he has a one of those easy passes that you get at Disney World. So, John, what's coming up on Current this week? What can we expect on Viewpoint, and where can we see you anywhere in the country?
Michael Moore will be joining us this week.
Wow!
I'm going to be announcing some new tours for the fall, but in a couple of weeks from now. But Michael Moore is joining us for this Wednesday's episode, the 20th. I just did his comedy festival, and then I just did a panel with him at Pace University last weekend. And I was like, okay, Mike, you got to come on now. So he'll be joining us. And, we've been having great guests on the show: Jeremy Scahill, Elliot Spitzer, Sister Simone Campbell, Representative Keith Ellison, And so it's great to have Michael Moore come and join the party.
Yeah, I'm very happy that we live in an area and have a TV provider that we could still get you, but everybody can get Viewpoint at currenttv.com and check it out there and follow along. You post all the YouTube videos and all kinds of cool stuff on your Twitter feed at John Fugelsang, as well as on your Facebook. And the tour, any chance we could see you in D.C.?
I sure hope so. I was hoping we'd do more sexy liberal dates. It's not looking like it, but you never know. And there'll be some other stuff coming up, too.
All right, well, my fingers...
That's on the books. I'll be letting you know, Danielle. And thanks for what you do. I love your show.
Thank you, John. Have a great, great afternoon. Thanks so much.
You too. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
John Fugelsang. You can check it out at John Fugelsang on Twitter, host of Viewpoint on Current TV Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Great YouTubes. If you live in an area that doesn't get current, there's so much content available online. And hey, call your cable providers. Tell them you want that channel back. So it's important to support media that you really appreciate and really want to take part in. So anyhow, we'll be right back with more on Talking Left. Get into those good Congress people that we were talking about before we spoke with John and tie up the show with that. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be back with more. So stick around.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Oh, I gotta say, that was fantastic.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Say you want to go to college. Yay! A Big Ten college. But you don't want to feel like part of the, well, you know. Is there an answer for you? Of course. Indiana University East. Go Red Wolves! Indiana University East. You'll get the quality of a Big Ten education in a small college setting. IU East offers more than 50 fields of study, from accounting to political science, taught by internationally recognized faculty with an average of 18 students per class. So it's not, student number 95A-6273, please report to. It's more like, hey, John, welcome to class. Best of all, you'll graduate with one of the most respected degrees anywhere, a degree from IU. Don't wait. Go to iue.edu or call 800-959-EAST to arrange a visit to Indiana University East. IU. Focused on you.
When our daughter Ava was 4, we noticed she didn't talk much. A genetic test revealed that she had hearing loss caused by 2 mutated genes. One she inherited from myself, the other from her dad. If it weren't for the amazing people at U of M, we might have never known the true cause of Ava's hearing loss or how to properly treat it.
The University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital is one of only a handful of hospitals in the world researching genetic hearing loss in addition to treating it. Our breakthrough research and advanced treatments combined with outstanding care help us change children's lives in extraordinary ways. For the leaders and best in pediatric care, call a Mott Patient Advisor at 877-475-MOTT or visit mottchildren.org.
She is more talkative now and more social. She loves music now. She's humming to the music, and it's sweet to actually hear her humming.
To learn more, call 877-475-MOTT.
They not only helped us find answers, they helped Ava find her voice.
That's the Michigan difference.
We Act Radio is a very proud partner of the Start at Westminster, a harm reduction, prevention, and awareness initiative sponsored by the Westminster Presbyterian Church right here in D.C. START stands for Syringe, Treatment, Advocacy, Resources, Training. These are the core elements of the harm reduction philosophy at START. The goal of this program is to reduce transmissions of HIV, hepatitis, and other bloodborne infectious diseases by empowering those at risk of infection with the tools, resources, and referrals they need to take charge of their health. Over the past year, the Start at Westminster tested over 1,600 people, and they're averaging about 150 tests each month. And of course, with the proper funding, that number could go even higher. For more information on this terrific program, go to www.startatwestminster.org or visit the Westminster Presbyterian Church, 400 I Street Southwest, right here in Washington, D.C.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Before we spoke with John Fugelsang, we were getting into it. We get so frustrated by so many of the things going on, and congressional approval is at 10%. Only 10% of Americans think Congress is doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I think they're talking about Congress members, and by Congress, I'm generalizing senators and representatives here. I think they're talking about people like this, like Adam Schiff of California, who has actually proposed the repeal of the authorization for use of military force.
Well, President Obama, in his speech, claimed that was something he wants to do. Let's put him to the test.
Adam Schiff is calling that bluff. We're sitting all day talking about the NSA, the Patriot Act. Every one of these issues needs to be worked on, needs to be repealed, and it starts with people like him proposing legislation to actually get it done.
It would be interesting, although there have been some, I think, committee approvals in terms of just the baseline for Syria, but if they try to use the AUMF for Syria, it would be nice to knock it out of there before they get too deep into that morass.
And even if we can't knock it out, it puts Obama on the spot of having to comment on it and really say whether or not he believes it should be repealed. And it puts both Democrats and Republicans, just like John was just talking about, people like Dianne Feinstein and John McCain on the spot to say, yes or no, the president should continue to have unlimited power to take our nation to war.
Right. War in quotes, though.
War in quotes.
Because it's not war in the constitutional sense, because that would require a declaration of war.
Right. I love that you're making air quotes.
We say we're just going to use force. Force.
By
the
the way,
force be with you.
By the way, we can't wait until Shane is back on camera, which will happen soon, and we'll have the live video feed up and running in a few months again. Another wonderful senator that we love and we take any opportunity to commend because she deserves it. Elizabeth Warren is also calling for transparency, and it doesn't have anything to do with government surveillance. If you have or have not heard of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it's a big deal. It's a trade agreement that makes NAFTA look like a handshake. It's a trade agreement that could give corporations the right to challenge say they don't like a regulation in this country, they have the right to challenge it. That right has typically only been given to other countries. Only other countries can say, your regulation on X hurts our country because of Y. This puts corporations on the same status as sovereign nations, in addition to being just another huge free trade agreement.
So it's a big, giant fascist agreement, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yikes.
And it's another free trade agreement that's going to put,
it's another method to deregulate.
Exactly.
And we're not hearing about it because it's done in backroom deals. And that's what Senator Warren's talking about.
Senator Elizabeth Warren has called for the release of the trade documents surrounding the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And her quote is amazing. This is from a letter she sent. She sent it to the U.S. Trade Representative nominee. It's who Obama wants to head the Trade Department. She said, I appreciate the willing of the Trade Office to make various documents available for the review by members of Congress, but I do not believe that is a substitute for more robust public transparency. She went on to say, If transparency would lead to widespread public opposition to a trade agreement, then that trade agreement should not be the policy of the United States.
In other words, they know if they release this stuff, people say, what are you kidding me? So they don't release it, just pass it, and then deal with it.
Exactly.
So, yikes.
Good on Elizabeth Warren.
There's also, and you have to look this up, but I encourage people to. Elizabeth Warren gave a great speech on the corporate capture of the federal courts.
Which is a big deal.
Speech to the American Constitution Society, June 13th, just a couple days ago. So check it out. There's a transcript of it.
And another senator whom we adore, Senator Bernie Sanders. We've been talking about the NSA now for 2 weeks on this show, and you've heard it everywhere. Well, Bernie Sanders is actually doing something about it. He has introduced the Restore Our Privacy Act, which reins in the powers of the NSA and the FBI to track phone call records and data of innocent Americans. He's a security guy. He's
he doesn't mess around.
Chairman of the Veterans Affairs. He is pro-military.
And he also, but the nice thing is he named his bill what it actually is.
Restore Our Privacy Act.
Yes. I mean, that's nice for once. It isn't,
It is. He said, we must give our intelligence and law enforcement agencies all of the tools that they need to combat terrorism, but we must do so in a way that protects our freedom and respects the Constitution's ban on unreasonable searches. And he is going directly to what we were talking about earlier, Shane, about if this hosting of data is an unreasonable search and seizure. And obviously, Senator Bernie Sanders thinks it is, and he has introduced legislation to make it a thing of the past. So I just think that as we complain, as we point out, Republicans voting on abortion again, we need to remind people that there are good people. Congress doesn't have to be broken if we had 532 more representatives like this.
Yeah.
To be exact.
There's more of them there.
Yes, there's great ones. Sherrod Brown, Alan Grayson. There are great individuals, but we need more of them, and we need to fight for them wherever they are. So we wanted to thank again our great guests today, Desi Doyen of the Green News Report, Brad Friedman of the Brad Blog, John Fugelsang of Current TV. You can check it out on Current TV Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. All of the links, as usual, that we talked about during the show, we'll put up with the blog post over at Talking Left.
I think I'll put the Elizabeth Warren link up there, too.
The one you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
It's a really cool one.
It's one of those things that's hard to digest, and we didn't have a long enough segment to get into it. Maybe we'll get into it next week.
Maybe.
It's really cool stuff.
Yes. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you wherever you're listening, and thank We Act Radio, Alex Lawson, and Kimon Freeman, Pete Callahan. Thank you to Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com, George Rodriguez of SoFlo Radio. Thanks to Rocky Mountain Mike for our amazing intro music. Just thanks to everybody who, everybody at Think Progress, everybody at these amazing sites that provide great information and help us talk about the show every day. Stay tuned if you're listening on We Act for Mark Levine. We'll see you next week.